Hello everyone. I've gotten a couple requests to talk a little bit more about the airbrush compressor that I use on my Avid CNC router. I use this for not only the fogbuster, which I also use an air blast on that to blow away chips, but I also use it for the blast gate that is pneumatically controlled on the dust collection. It's kind of a nice small form factor and relatively quiet compressor that can run all these little auxiliary things. So let's take a closer look at this thing. So let's start by talking about some of the basic features of this thing. It is a 1/3 horsepower dual piston airbrush compressor. It's originally designed for airbrushes, of course, and it does have a couple of modifications I should point out before we get too far into this. The outlet right here, I have installed a push connect fitting. It had some other airbrush fitting, which I am not familiar with, but I put one of those on here. You're gonna have a bunch of these fittings when you do all the pneumatics anyway. And then I added these two fans on top. For anyone that hasn't watched my other videos about this thing, I added the fans on top of here so I can run this basically continuous duty cycle. It's not really made for continuous duty cycle. It's not really rated for anything, maybe 20%, 30%, I'm not really sure, but it does get pretty warm if you just run this thing for 45 minutes, which is what I did in the initial testing. It gets kind of hot, so I add these two fans on top, and now I can run it for like half an hour without it really even getting that much above ambient temperature. So these are extra, and the fitting on the end is extra, but everything else is pretty much stock. Like most compressors, when you turn them on, they go from nothing up to a certain PSI and then turn off. This one has two different switches on it, and you can select where it's going to basically stop at. There's a 7 bar and a 4 bar, and that translates to about 100 PSI or 58 or 60 PSI. So depending on where you have this switch set to, it will go up to that pressure inside the tank, and then it has the cutoff, which is kind of nice for different applications. On the front, or this face of the thing, you do have a regulator. This does come with it, so you have a nice little readout right here that is in PSI and bar, and then by pulling this up and adjusting it, you can adjust the PSI that comes out of this thing, which is pretty nice that this all is included. So before I get to the sound level testing and how long it takes to get up to pressure and all that good stuff, let's just talk about general size, because you're probably getting this because you want something kind of small. It's from the end to the end of the regulator here, it's about 13 inches. Without the fans, we're looking at about 12 inches. And overall width, we're probably looking at 5 to 6 inches. So it is actually relatively compact. If I lay it over on its side, you can see it is a relatively small thing. We do have a drain down here at the bottom, just a little screw drain there, and then there is also a pressure release valve somewhere right over there. So it actually does have a lot of the little functions that you would expect on a compressor. Even though it's an airbrush compressor, it does feel a lot like a normal compressor, just very small in size. It is relatively heavy. I think it says about 7 kilograms, so about 14, 15 pounds, somewhere around there. It does feel overall pretty decent. One thing about that, this is about $150, so it's not really all that cheap. You can get a pretty okay pancake compressor for about that much money. You can find these on Amazon, eBay. There is an Amazon affiliate link for this one down below. It's kind of a convenience tax. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Sure, you can get a pancake compressor for less money that will do higher PSI and maybe about the same CFM, but the whole reason you get this is because it is small and it's quiet, and you can just kind of tuck this under a machine and have it dedicated. That's the reason I got it, and we'll get into the sound later, but it is substantially quieter than most compressors. So just an FYI, 150 bucks, it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it is because of the form factor and the sound level. That's the reason why you'd get something like this. So let's get into some testing. I'm going to throw it into the first switch position, which will get up to about 60 PSI. We'll see how long that takes with this, and then we can see how much power it is consuming with this kilowatt down here. And I'm just using this little jumper, which just kind of blocks this airflow. So let's take a look at that. And just a quick note, I am not running the fans in this test, so the power consumption that you see is strictly for the compressor only. As you can see, it took a little bit over a minute and 9 seconds to get from an empty tank up to about 58 psi or 4 bar, which is just below 60. You can see it's just below the 60 mark right there. It was doing about 150 watts, which a third of a horsepower. Horsepower is 750 watts. That should be about 250 peak. We're only doing about 150, so is this not really a full third horsepower, or were we just not drawing a full third horsepower? Maybe either one of those, but it was only about 150 watts. If that's something you care about, you could look at this and say that it is extremely efficient. I don't know. Let's go with the other test, which is bringing it up to about 7 bar, which is a full 100 psi. So as you can see from the video, I stopped the test around 15.5 minutes or so, and off camera I let it run up to about 40 minutes. So that was from empty tank all the way up to about 40 minutes. It ended up at about 85 psi, maybe slightly below that, which is about 6 bar, and I just don't think it's going to get any more above that. So the 100 psi switch, or the 7 bar switch, really is probably there more of a safety mechanism. Do not have any expectations that you would set this to the 2 position on the switch, have it get up to 100 psi, and then turn off. That's not really what it's for, or it is not capable of doing that. The good thing, I guess, that you could look at is you could use that position just to turn it on. You could use that as just an on switch, and the 100 psi is just there as kind of a safety buffer so that if you do, for whatever reason, get up to that, it will shut off. I kind of liked this functionality when I first had this, because I could use a relay or a solenoid or something like that to just literally turn the thing on, and I wouldn't have to worry about it turning itself off. So you could use it for that functionality if you wanted, but getting up to, you know, anything really beyond 85 psi is probably not going to happen. And if you go back and look at the recording, the previous clip, you can see that it got up to, I think, 80 psi at about 5 minutes, and then it just kind of stalled out after that. So it's pretty linear up to about 5 minutes, and then it just kind of goes off the rails from there. So just an FYI, something to keep in mind. 80 psi, about the max you're going to get out of this. The last and final test we're going to do is measure the sound level. You can see down there I have my good old classic vintage Radio Shack SPL meter. Sometimes analog is best. It is set to the 70 decibel range, so when it hits 0, somewhere around there, that is 70. Anything on the left-hand side is less than that. Anything on the right-hand side is more than that, but it's set up for 70 decibels right now. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. I am off camera over here. I'm sitting just off camera right next to this. I'm about a foot away. That is exactly 1 foot away as well. So I'm going to test this with and without the fans, just to give you an idea. This first test will be without. And another thing to note is my lapel microphone that I'm using right now is non-auto ranging or non-auto adjusting, so it will be the exact same whether this is on or not. It's not going to adjust anything based on this, so you can kind of get an idea of me sitting exactly 12 inches away from it, what it will sound like with this noise in the background. So let's turn it on. So you can see right now it's like 60, I think it's 66 decibels, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's at the -4, so 66 is about where it is. And I'm talking right now, it's literally right next to me. My face is right up against it, so you can kind of get an idea of how that sounds in the background. So now let's turn on the fans, which add some amount of noise. So the fans themselves add maybe about 10 decibels. They are relatively loud fans. These are really aggressive fans. They blow a lot of air. So, you know, just keep that in mind. If you are going to add the fans on top, if you get really aggressive ones like this, it's going to add quite a bit. But we're still only at about, what, 76 decibels? Maybe a little bit less than that, which really isn't that loud from about 1 foot away. So yeah, we're sitting about 64 decibels from about 1 foot away. So here I am at the workbench. I've got it 6 feet away from me. So from me to it, 6 feet. So this should give you an idea what it's like, you know, inside your shop when the thing is running. My lav mic is pretty good at rejecting background noise, but if we look at the handy meter, it is on the 60 decibel scale right now, and with me not talking, it's at about the -5 mark. So it's about 55 decibels from being 6 feet away. And I'm not, you know, speaking any louder or anything like that. I'm speaking normally. And you could easily have a conversation with someone 5 feet away from you with this thing running in the background. It's relatively quiet, doesn't really get in the way. If I was listening to a podcast or something like that, it really wouldn't interfere with much. If you put this underneath the CNC, like what I do, it gets even quieter. If you put a little hush box around that, you could probably get it to about near silent. It's pretty quiet. You can maybe hear it in the background. It's pretty good. That is one of the reasons why you get something like this. So there you go. That is the overview for this 3rd horsepower dual piston airbrush compressor. It is certainly not a replacement for a traditional air compressor. However, it can be a good solution if you need to run little auxiliary things. And if I ever upgrade my Avid CNC router to have a automatic tool changer, those are usually pneumatically controlled. I'm probably going to lean on this to try and do that as well, and I think it probably should accomplish that goal as long as I don't need greater than 80 psi. It gets up to 70 quite well, so just take that into account. The link down below is an affiliate link, which means I get a couple pennies out of it if you do buy one off of that. If this video was helpful for you and you want to contribute back to the channel, feel free to use that link. If you don't like the concept of that link and you think I'm just trying to scam you out of money, more power to you. Don't use the link. I don't really care. But just letting you know the link is down there for that purpose, and it gives you an idea of the exact one that I purchased. So hopefully this gives you a little bit better idea about what these things are, what you can use them for, and what you can't use them for. As always, check me out on Facebook for any updates to my channel, and see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.